just like to make two things.
Okay.
That the Cadiz Constitution of 1812 was an inspiration to Filipino reformers, including Jose Rizal. I'm sure Paolo caught the relevance of the Cadiz Constitution to this discussion today. It's also quite well known to Filipino historians. And number two, Paolo, one of the founders of our revolutionary organization, Katipunan, one of the three founders, by the name of Ladislao Diwa, he was very fond of all things Italian. And in fact, the structure of our revolutionary organization, Katipunan, was inspired by the Italian secret societies during the Risorgimento. So there is a link actually. One of the founding fathers of our republic was very much into Italian things. In fact, he named two of his daughters Cecilia after Sicily and Edna after Etna. So that's why I was glad to be the one to moderate this session. So let me share what Sung Ho emailed me about Paolo. Paolo Ceccoli of Italia studied philosophy at the University of Milan and started his career as a history and citizenship teacher in 1986. Then he became a language teacher and Italian literature teacher for a decade. So since 1997, he has been teaching philosophy in a secondary school, holding a Master of Arts in History Education from the University of London. And I hope that I will have a chance to read his two history textbooks if it's in English, and the general history education books that he had co-authored. Of course, he is a EuroClio ambassador, having participated in the programs of EuroClio. And it's noteworthy that his particular interest lies in controversial topics and how to teach controversial topics. So let me now turn over the floor to Paolo Ceccoli, our evening's speaker. Paolo?
Thank you very much. Now I will. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, and I'm very curious to deepen my knowledge of this connection with Philippines, because it's been for me a surprise. But anyway, now I will try to share you my presentation. Let me see if I can find out the way to do it.
You take your time.
Yeah. So first of all, why this is a sensitive and interesting topic still now, because you know the problem with the Italian history and the Italian politics is that we are still one of the 10 most important economy in the world. I think now the position is the 8th. We were the 5th economy 30 years ago, more or less. So we are slowing down and we are becoming less important than before, but we still are one of the most important economy in the world. But obviously, everyone, and rightly, think that we are not one of the most significant and important political system in the world. So Italy has been criticized many times for the political weakness, for the political, I don't know, inconsistency of many of the choices the Italian state did in the past, and in the recent past. So that's why revisiting a little bit our unification can give you some understanding of what is going on in Italy nowadays. And that's why I called my presentation Italy is a state without nation, or maybe if you want to give it a more positive perspective, a peculiar modernity, because somehow we are in this kind of dilemma. Okay, how can I go on? Okay.
Paolo, I screen shared for you so I can.
Okay, say go on, please. So the first thing to be aware of in order to understand Italian history and political history is the geography. There are some similarity with Korea. The dimensions of the geography is quite the same, but we have some differences. One of that is that we can divide our peninsula in three parts, more or less with the same dimension. The northern part, the western part, and the eastern part. Of course, you can see that most part of our territory is mountain. We have very few plants, but these plants have a very important role, because the biggest plant is the plant in the north, and where Milan is the most important economic and political city and social city, and one other plan is the plan, of course, in which Rome stayed. You can go on, please. So another thing we have to think about when we think about Italy is the position in the Mediterranean. So the geography, we will see it's very important, but also the geography of the peninsula, of course, is very important. It's quite obvious also that the position in the middle of the Mediterranean is very important, because as you can see, we are a kind of bridge between the northern part and the southern part of the Mediterranean, and also we are a bridge from the eastern and the western part. Because if you see the orientation of the Italian peninsula, you can see that the eastern part of Italy is more or less in the same position in which there are some Balkan part of Europe. So we live in a situation in which Italy is too long to be a state with the same climate, with the same habits, with the same, but also too wide, because we have a part of Italy belonging to the really the very western part of Europe, and a part of Italy belonging to a very eastern part of Europe. Yes, go on, please. The unification of Italy is a very recent phenomenon, but somehow the first administrative division of Italy was given already by the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire divided the Italian peninsula in 11 parts, and these 11 parts were connected as you can imagine, with geography, but also with population living in that part of in this part of the world. As you obviously know, the Roman Empire was not the political strategy of the Roman Empire was not to eliminate the peculiarity of the local elites. On the other hand, they try to mingle and to merge the Roman elite with the local elites. And the local elites became Roman, but on the other hand, the local elites stay still somehow. And this is very important because just to give you an example, you see here there is a region called Etruria, and this region is the region in which the Etruscan people lived at the time. And these Etruscan people, of course, they became Latin, they became Roman, they spoke Latin, but they stay also with their religion beliefs, they stay with their languages, the accent, for example, the Tuscany accent in nowadays in Italy, still have, according to the history of the language, still have some relics, some remnants, probably belonging to the Etruscan language. So Italy was, of course, unified, so to say, by the Roman Empire. By the Roman Empire really knew very well that there were many differences in the population living at the time in Italy. So we can't say that Italy had a privileged position in the Roman Empire as a unified territory, because besides the region around Rome, in every part of Italy, the differences were already there. Yes, thank you. You can go on. Okay. Coming to the, I'm giving you a kind of summary of the Italian history, because otherwise we can't understand what happened, what kind of revolution was the Italian unification. Coming, for example, to the Middle Age, when the modern empire crumbled down and the new states in the Middle Age came up, you can see here a possible map of the German Roman Empire, the so-called sacred German Roman Empire in the 11th century. And you can see that here the German emperor try to state their sovereignty on Italy, but only on the northern part of Italy. The Regnum Italicum was only on the northern part of Italy, included only the northern part of Italy, because in the southern part of Italy, the Normans placed their government, and they rule it from the 11th century onward. So the unification made by Roman Empire, but was not a real unification. In the Middle Age, there was this fracture, this separation between the North and the South, and the South, the North and the South, that stated and remained until the Italian unification. So the destinies, the fate of the two parts of Italy separated for more or less 800-900 years, depending on your interpretation. Yes, we can go on. Okay. This is a very interesting map before we start to talk about Italian unification. This is a map taken by from the book, the Dante's book on the Italian languages. Dante Alighieri wrote a book called De Vulgari Eloquentia, And this book was a linguistic examination of the languages spoken in Italy. We can't say that at the time they were dialects, because they were different languages. As nowadays is the French is different from Spanish and from Portuguese and from Italian. These different languages were summarized, were described by Dante in this way, and this is very interesting because, as you probably know, what we call nowadays Italian is an evolution of the Tuscany language, and because Dante Alighieri wrote in this kind of Italian language, and Dante Alighieri, of course, is one of the most important poet in the world. But he wrote in this Tuscany language, and therefore the Tuscany dialect became the Italian language, the formal literary Italian language. But you can put in your mind this reality. The reality is that Italian so-called dialects are not really dialects, because they differ in grammar, in structures, in languages, in vocabulary so much. It's not a question only about accents. It's a question about difference in languages. For example, in the south part of Italy, there are many connections between southern so-called dialects and Greek languages, Arab languages. In the northern part of Italy, for example, we use the preposition exactly like the English people. So it's very interesting that the structures of the languages are very different. Of course, the Italian literary language is the Tuscany one. Of course, the Italian literary languages became the standard Italian because it was used by television, by radio, by cinema, and so on and so forth. But the substratum of these differences still are with us. Thank you. You can go on. So, what happened why all these differences? I didn't mention you the Renaissance because everyone knows it. The best part of the Italian history, of course, was the Renaissance. If you think about when Italian history, how can I say, was a history which dominated the world, at least the history of Europe, of course, was the Renaissance. The Renaissance was basically started in Italy, expanded in all over the Europe, and the paradoxical situation is that the less Italy was united from a political point of view, the more Italy culture was important in European history. Why the things changed in the 19th century? But because of political and history, political situation, and the history after the French Revolution. This map shows you the first modern contemporary state called Italian. Was the so-called Repubblica Italiana, which is the Italian Republic built up by Napoleon. Everyone knows that Napoleon was mother tongue was not French, but was the Italian spoken in Corsica Island. He spoke a very bad French, at least from a pronunciation point of view. And he thought that after some part of Italy included in his French Empire, another part could have been called Italian Republic. But as you can see, this Italian Republic included only some part of the north or the northern part of the peninsula. Okay, but we have this first Italian state called Italian Republic. Yes, go on. Okay. After the Italian Republic, Napoleon founded also the first Kingdom of Italy. And pay attention that this Kingdom of Italy, connecting myself with the Cadiz Constitution now, this part of the Kingdom of Italy lasted from 1805 to 1815. And this is a very important not well-known history of Italy, because the Kingdom of Italy had a very conspicuous army at the time. They were able to give the opportunity of more than 30,000 people to participate in the invasion of Russia by the Grande Armée. Napoleon Grand Armée. These 30,000 people were a significant, a very important group of people, because they were basically many of them were forced in a compulsory military service, but others were voluntarily participating in this war. And as it happened to the Great Army, Napoleon Great Army, 90% of them died in the Russian plans, but 2,000 or 3,000 of them came back in Italy. And they were the seeds of the Risorgimento. They were the seeds of the Italian unification. They were the people who tried to foster the Italian unification at first. They were the professionals of the Italian unification, because they had the military experience, because they had the political ideals, of course, political, very moderate, liberal, moderate ideals as what is stated in the Cadiz Constitution. But anyway, they were the veterans who the survived veterans who were the technical military experts who fostered the first part of the unification in Italy. And at this time, Garibaldi was a little boy, but this experience became a kind of myth, foundational myth of the Italian unification, because this army fought under the three colors. The flag of Italy was already the green, white, and red three colors at the time. So it's been a very interesting. That's why, for example, in Milano existed a royal palace, because this royal palace was the palace of the Napoleonic king of Italy, deputy king of Italy, because the real king was Napoleon, but the deputy king had his royal palace in Milan. Milan was never the capital of the kingdom before, because the capital of the Middle Age kingdom was Pavia, was not Milan. So it's the royal palace. It's a symbol of what kingdom of Napoleon Kingdom of Italy meant for the Italian history. Yes, thank you. Okay, so this I will go back now. I will go back after with the presentation of the events. But this map shows you how was revolutionary the unification of Italy, because for the first time ever since Italy was politically unified, in 1861. It was never unified politically, never, even under the Roman Empire, it was not unified because Italy was part of an empire. The first political unification was in 1861. This is a big difference with Korea, for example, because Korea is unified, it's been unified many years before. So it's really strange. Just to give you how can I say, a kind of anthropological example. In the North, we didn't eat pasta before the unification. So now you can think that Italy is always pasta and pizza, but we didn't eat it. So it's been a consequence of the unification. It's not the same the other way around. When I was a young boy, and I went on holiday in the southern Europe, they called me. Oh, in the 60s, not a century ago, they call me polentone. That means the one who eat polenta, which is the mashed like a kind of I don't know, couscous and whatever. But it's not. We didn't eat pasta. We didn't use olive oil in the north. So it's been a complete revolution of customs and habit as an aftermath of this unification. This unification was I don't know, a disruption of what was the traditional Italy, in the good and in the bad, of course, but it was a completely its aftermath was a completely yeah. There is a French word very interesting. This is, I don't know, the English translation is bouleversement. That means a revolution with disruption altogether. So it's been really difficult to manage for the governments, for the people, and so on and so forth. And you can see in 1861, still the Roman state was bigger than now, and the Pope was still governing and ruling the Roman state, and the part, the eastern part with Venice as a capital city was still under the Austria. Yes, go on. Here is the situation after 1866, and yes, you can go on. And here is the situation after 1871 and until the end of the Second World War, until 1943. This is a very interesting map because you can see that in the eastern part of the Adriatic Sea, the fascist regime conquered even the most part of what is Slovenia nowadays, but for example, which is not absolutely was not a part in which there were Italian-speaking people, but it didn't conquer, for example, Corsica, which is it was, and now more or less there are also some part of it, a place in which there were Italian-speaking people. Yes, this is the maximum expansion of the Italian territory. This is the biggest Italian territory we had after the unification. Yes, thank you. And this is our map nowadays. That means all this part now belonged to the belonged to Yugoslavia and now to the to the former Yugoslavia states. Yes, thank you. Okay. Before going into details, I would like to stress a thing that I didn't mention it. Okay, we had the first unification in 1861, but actually we don't have the same state since the 1861, because actually we have three different states. The Kingdom of Italy from 1861 to the fascist regime, so from 1861 to 1925, more or less, when the fascist regime started a complete dictatorship, and this is completely another kind of state, from 1925 to the end of the Second World War. And then we have the Republic, which was chosen by the people exactly 8 years ago, the 2nd of June in 1946, after a referendum. So you have to be aware that there were two important turning points, two important differences, two important separation between the liberal state, the fascist state, and the fascist state and democratic one. So these were different states. So Italy is not the same as it was in 1861. But coming back to my point is we had unification. This unification resulted in three different kinds of state. These different kinds of state, why three different kinds of state? Because probably the unification was made in a way in which the political stability was not possible. And why political stability was not possible? Because it's very difficult to define what it is, what does it mean, what it is Italian from a social and political point of view. Of course, we have literature. Italian literature started in the 13th century. We have Dante, we have a lot of important, of course, we have the Renaissance, we have all the cultural features speaking in Italian. Of course, for example, the language of the opera lyrica is Italian, is still Italian. Of course, we have a lot of things that are Italian from a cultural point of view. But does an Italian people exist? Yes and no. So there are many. There is a big debate. I put in the end of this presentation half a dozen of books about this topic. The most interesting one, because it's one written by an Italian scholar teaching in New York. I mean in Fordham University, New York. And it's very interesting because it's a book written for the international public, firstly in English and then in Italian. So you can probably enjoy if you want to understand what does it mean Italian, what does it mean Italianità, what does it mean to be Italian. Of course, it's difficult to understand what does it mean to be an Italian, because there were for centuries a patchwork of states. And this patchwork of states lasted for so long that, for example, my family come from a part of Piemonte, which was the central region of the dynasty of the Kingdom of Sardinia and then Kingdom of Italy dynasty. But my family came from a part of Piedmont, arriving in under the Savoy rule only at the very beginning of 18th century. And still my friends living in Turin, they say that I come from a false Piedmont, because this false Piedmont has been conquered by the Savoy only 300 years ago. So it's a situation very, very, very strange. These differences are very strange still now. What does it mean to be Italian? Of course, as I said, the literature, but you can imagine what does it mean literature in a place in which in 1861, more than 70% of the population was not able to read and write even the name. So it's a thing that unified only the very educated, well-educated elite. Okay. The standard, one of the biggest, the most important writer in the 19th century, Alessandro Manzoni. I don't know if any one of you heard about him. He wrote a book in English called The Betrothed. The Betrothed. Yes, I know. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, but he wasn't able to speak in Italian. He wrote the basic Italian novel. So the novel which gave us the basic model for writing a novel in Italy, but he wasn't able to speak in Italian. He spoke in French and in the Milano language. So it's a very complicated thing. And as you probably know, after the Italian unification, I don't know if it was Cavour, but anyway, was a common saying. The Piedmontese elite, after the conquest of Sicily and the kingdom of Naples, said, okay, now we have made Italy. Now we must make Italians. And I think it's an ongoing job. Still now, we are not sure what does it mean to be Italian, because for example, for many parts of the political landscape in Italy, to be Italian means to be born by Italians. And for example, we are one of the countries in Europe in which the citizenship process for people who were born in foreign countries is most difficult. So it's a long process, very difficult. So that's why being Italian is an issue, is a problem. Okay. Yes, go on, please. Okay. Now the facts, the events. The first events is this is the political map. The political map before the unification. We have the Kingdom of Sardinia here. A part of the Kingdom of Sardinia was beyond the Alps. In Savoy, they spoke French. The city of Nice was an Italian-speaking city, but it was beyond the Alps as well. In the Kingdom of Lombard and Venetia was directly ruled by the Austrians. There are other duchies, other little states, and there was this big Kingdom of Two Sicily who ruled basically ruled the southern part of Italy. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can go. Oh, before the unification, we have three waves of revolutionary movement. The first one was connected to what Professor Carganilla said before, because after the map I showed you before is the map which went out to the Congress of Vienna in 1815. So the decision of Congress of Vienna stated the situation we saw before. And after 5 years, there were some movements, some revolutions failed, but some revolutions in many parts of Italy, especially Naples, Sicily, and Piedmont. And all of them raised the flag of the Cadiz Constitution. They wanted to establish a government with the Cadiz Constitution. And there was a reason, because this movement were a consequence of the movement in Cadiz, happening in Cadiz, where the troops commanded by the government to go in the Southern America to suppress the independence movement in Southern America, to fight against the Bolivarian armies, refused to do it and asked for the Cadiz Constitution. And this had as a consequence the Italian Revolution. We have to understand the lesson from these first waves of liberal movements in Italy, that the process of Italian unification has been always a consequence of an international situation. So another interesting thing that we have in common, for example, with the Germans, when we try to do on our own in Italy an independence movement and unification movement, we failed. But when we try to do it exploiting correctly, exploited in a very clever way the international situation, we won. So it's another interesting features of it. Italy on her own wasn't able to succeed in this process. Okay, thank you. The second wave was the wave following the revolution in July, the 3 days of the revolution in Paris, 1830, in Paris. This revolution was, as you know, the end of the absolutist regime in France, and the revolution in France ended up with the so-called bourgeoisie monarchy by Louis-Philippe d'Orléans. And this switch from an absolutist monarchy and the liberal bourgeoisie monarchy, as we usually said, pushed the Italian liberals to do some uprising, failed and suppressed by the Austrians, basically. But was the place in which Giuseppe Mazzini came out. So one of the founding fathers of our independence was Giuseppe Mazzini, who finally thought that this kind of movement run by some very little tiny elite, urban elite, weren't feasible, were not possible to succeed, and he tried to show up an idea of a larger people involvement, which was leading, in his opinion, to a unified republic. The first idea of a unified republic came out after the 30s in the 18th century. In the 19th century by Mazzini. Yes, thank you. Actually, there was a second, but before Mazzini, who definitely failed his program, even if there are some of Mazzini legacy which still are with us. But the first unification program in Italy was not the Mazzini's one, but was the so-called neo-Guelfism. So the liberal, Catholic liberal in Italy tried to foster the idea that Italy would have been unified under a federation run by the Pope. And it was an interesting move, because the idea of federation, actually, I think it was the best one at the time, because probably the Italian unification, if the Italian unification would have been a federation, would have been really better for everyone. But the move was interesting also because the Pope at the time, Pius the ninth, yes, Pius the Ninth, was probably at the very beginning not so against this idea. But we will see that Pius the Ninth refused to join a war that broke up in 1848 in order to implement and to build up this federation. Yes, thank you. Sorry, of course, this is a summary. Okay, of course, if the point of Mazzini, which is a unification of Italy as a unified republic, is still with us, even the point of neo-Guelphism is still with us, because in Italy, Catholicism is one of the factors of the political landscape and unification. And here we can see a summary of what the architects of the unification did, because Giuseppe Mazzini, as I said, fostered a republican unification, but it didn't succeed. The three people who succeeded to unify Italy were Giuseppe Garibaldi, which was a military leader, the prime minister of Piedmont state, the Count Cavour, and the king of Sardinia, Victor Emmanuel. Okay, we can go. Thank you. Who was Giuseppe Garibaldi? Okay, Giuseppe Garibaldi was a very interesting figure because it's been, of course, the most popular protagonist of this history. Garibaldi was a sailor. When he was a young man, was a Republican. He was exiled in South America. He fought for the liberation of the Republic of Rio Grande do Sul in South America, and returned in Italy in 1848. We will talk about the 1848 revolution because it's the most important one, according to me. And he became, he switched, he wasn't Republican anymore. He said, okay, we have to unify Italy. And the factor, the unified factor of Italy for him was the romantic idea of nation. And we have to unify Italy, and I don't know, I don't mind if the unification will be the unification as a monarchy. I want to unify Italy. And he fought for Italy, for the unification of Italy, especially in the expedition of conquering the South. Okay, thank you. Okay, as I said, from a political point of view, he was not a monarchic guy. He was Republican, but he was, of course, nationalist. He was a kind of social democratic people, man from a social and political point of view, but also a strong nationalist. Somehow we can say that the union of a socialist attitude and a very nationalist attitude, which made up the fascist ideology, was already there, even if Garibaldi and Mazzini were absolutely democratic and they didn't want a dictatorship. Yes, thank you. Okay, the 1848 revolution is the center of all the story. The 1848 revolution is the spring of peoples. Is the most important revolution in Europe ever since. In this 1848 revolution, all the urban elite, all the people belonging to the literate people in Europe participated in this revolution. It was a democratic revolution for independence and unity in Germany, in Italy, in Romania, in Poland, in what now is the Czech Republic, in Austria, in France. This revolution was completely defeated in Italy, but demonstrated, show up the idea that at least for the elite and for the urban people, the people living in urban context, a unification was needed and one. I continue to say the urban people because the farmers were not involved. In Italy, the farming was a very poor one, was a farming with a very old style was not involved at all. And one of the problems is that the dialectic, the contradiction, the inconsistencies between cities and countryside is still with us, and probably will be for also for some times. Yes, thank you. Okay. The 1848 revolution.
It's 21 hours.
The 1848 revolution, I'm going to end up this one. The 1848 revolution resulted in the First War of Independence, which was the second attempt to make a federation in Italy, because this war was fought by volunteers coming from all over the country, all over the peninsula. All these volunteers were recruited locally, so there were Pope State troops, Tuscany troops, Milano troops, southern troops, and they represented their territory. But they were defeated, and they were defeated also because there was the intervention of Piemontese. The Piemontese interpreted this war as a war of expansion. Yes, thank you. And here is when Count of Cavour arrived. Count of Cavour came up because Count of Cavour was the prime minister of the Kingdom of Sardinia, and he tried to exploit the international situation in order to, on one hand, realize some kind of unification. He didn't thought at the very beginning of a complete unification, but somehow to expand the territory of Kingdom of Sardinia, exploiting the push factors of this Italian unification, exploiting people like Garibaldi, you know. And on the other hand, he understood that an Italian unification was possible only if Kingdom of Sardinia took its place into the political landscape in Europe. For example, he participated in the War of Crimea, in the Crimean Gamble I wrote. So in the idea that a small part of the Crimea's of the army fighting in Crimea against the Russians was Piemontese, and it's a kind of similar story of the kingdom of Napoleon, Kingdom of Italy. A few bunch of people dying for the British, actually for the French and the British at the time, was able to put the Italian situation on the table. On the other hand, so Cavour tried to appease and be to flatter the English, the Great Britain government and the French government as well participated in this war. And in the Congress, in the Peace Congress in Paris after the War of Crimea, 1856, he gave a speech, a very important speech, in which he said, okay, if you don't want another 1848 revolution, another uprising, another rioting uprising of mobs making a lot of mess in Italy, you have to help us to simplify, at least simplify the European, the Italian landscape. To simplify does not mean unify completely the peninsula, but to simplify the panorama of the Italian political landscape. And this happened because Cavour was able to make a secret alliance with Napoleon III, and this secret alliance was meant to divide the Italian peninsula in three parts. The north part belonging to the Piedmont state, the central part belonging to the Pope, a little tiny part to the Pope, and another part to a French Napoleonic prince, and the southern part to another French ruler. So this was the preconditions of what is called the Second War of Independence. Yes, thank you. You can go on. Bernard, if you go on, it's for me, it would be better. But anyway, yes, thank you. I already summarized the situation here. The enemy, of course, the super enemy was the Austrian Empire. The Great Britain supported morally and a little bit also practically the Italian independence, and the France supported in a very important way with the Battle of Magenta and Solferino in 1859, and Prussia also supported Italy in the independence, because in 1866 Italy was defeated actually by the Austrians, but because Prussia won the war with Austria in what is now Czech Republic, Italy was able to conquer also the Venice region. Yes, thank you. Okay, yes, you can go on. Yes, thank you. This already tried to. When the unification happened. Unification happened when Garibaldi was allowed to leave the coast of Genoa with around 1,000 of volunteers who were able to conquer the kingdom of 9 million people. Because why they were able? Because they tried to exploited some uprising happening in Sicily, and because they were tolerated by Cavour and the Kingdom of Sardinia government. They said, okay, if you succeed, we will help you, but if you don't succeed, it's up to you. And Garibaldi was able to conquer the South Kingdom also because in the southern there was, for example, a very interesting press campaign in the British newspapers. The British newspaper say that at the time told the story, quite true, not completely, but quite true, that the kingdom, the southern kingdom, was still in the Middle Ages. They were not civilized, so they need a modern state to rule them, because they were kind of European Africans, more or less, very racist also was this kind of comments. But anyway, Garibaldi conquered the south and he gave it to the Kingdom of Sardinia. Yes, thank you. We already mentioned the intervention with Prussia. You can go on. Okay, we already said that. You can go on. At the 17th of March, 1861, this is a very interesting remark. The 17th of March on 1861, the Parliament of Turin elected all over Italy, all over the conquered Italy, but only by the 2% of the male population. The male population was, the right to vote was given to the male population. 2% was able to vote. In some part of the southern Italy, it meant 3 or 4 people for an entire town. The 2% of the male population was elected in this parliament in Turin, and the Parliament of Turin didn't proclaim the Kingdom of Italy. Pay attention. They proclaimed Victor Emmanuel II as a king of Italy. That's why, for example, they didn't change the order. So Victor Emmanuel was not Victor Emmanuel II as a kingdom of Italy. Was Victor Emmanuel II as a kingdom of Sardinia, and stay still as Victor Emmanuel II as a king of Italy. So that means the interpretation of the king was an expansion of his kingdom. Yes, thank you. We already said that Mazzini failed, but what we can say about Mazzini's vision is really interesting. He was completely naive. A lot of people died because he believed in his charisma. He was a very charismatic guy, and he was a kind of monk of the revolution. He was a kind of saint of the revolution. But what is really impressing me from an historical point of view is that when he ruled actually a part of Italy, he ruled the Roman Republic in the 1848-49 revolution. For some months, he ruled the Roman Republic. He ruled in Rome. And they prepared a constitution, a very interesting constitution, which is one of the inspiration of the constitution we have nowadays. So many of the principles, many of the idea that Mazzini gave us 100 years ago was realized only 100 after, which is really interesting according to me. Yes, thank you. Yeah. I don't know. Many of you knows what this author, who their author are, but the dominant narrative of this story is the nationalist liberal for many years. Then the Marxist interpretation and the nationalist liberal idea was already stated by Benedetto Croce after the Second World War. So the history of Italy is the history of freedom, the freedom of a country, the freedom of a people. But the Marxist interpretation underline the contradiction, the inconsistency between the need of an agrarian reform, which never happened. Actually, Italy had an agrarian reform that means the elimination of feudal and middle-age landowners only in the 50s of the 20th century, when it was not needed anymore because Italy became an industrial country. For 100 years, more or less, the farmers were completely ignored, were completely separated from the evolution of the country, and were also repressed many times. From the great school of British historians, there became arrived the so-called revisionistic interpretation, which challenged the liberal one. And the name of Denis Max Smith or Lucy Ryle, which is who is the most important, I think, British expert on this field, defined Garibaldi politically naive, which is completely true. Cavour opportunistic, and the unification with the South was assimilated as an invasion, which is not completely true, but as his point. And there is also a kind of post-colonial interpretation of this unification, which emphasizes the idea of an internal colonization, which is also kind of true. Even racially connotated, because some of the Piemontese elite arriving in Sicily, when they wrote back home to their family, they said, "Oh, we arrived in Africa. This is not Italy, this is Africa." Yes, thank you. I don't need to explain to you the framework of this debate, yes, of this discussion. Yes, you can go on. Okay, this is the legacy of the Risorgimento. One remark about the word Risorgimento. The word Risorgimento, as well as the word Renaissance, is a suspect. Every historian knows that when you want to explain something with the word reborn, it's completely false. The Renaissance was not the Renaissance of nothing, of anything, because it was a new thing, and the Risorgimento was not the resurgency of nothing. Was a completely new thing. But why they called that process Risorgimento? But because they wanted to connect it. They want to invent a past of greatness, the Italian past of greatness, which does not exist. Okay. Italy became a part of the new balance of power. Coming to international relationship, Italy became a pawn in the chessmate of European powers, and of course, when it tried to become a superpower, was absolutely destroyed, but became a pawn of this chess table. Yes, of course. And the Questione Meridionale is still with us. The gap between the development of the northern part and the southern part is still there. So the northern part and the southern part grew a lot in all this period, but the gap stay there. So that's really important. Just to mention a figure that I know, because it's my job to teach. In 1861, when there was the first unification, in my region, 70% of the population was literate. In Calabria was 2 or 3%. So it's a difference which is still coming to the evidence. Okay. Yes. We are. This is the book I selected. So the book inspired me from this presentation. I mean, the most important general account of this process is the Christopher Duggan one, very recent, Lucy Ryle. I mean, it's very interesting. Maglio Graziano is an Italian scholar teaching in Paris. And his book is very interesting because the argument, the topic is the idea that we have a state, but we didn't have a national identity, and we will not have any national identity, because it's really quite impossible to have it for many reasons you can read in this book. The fifth book is also very interesting because once again, Italian economy in many aspects contradicts what is about politics, because we had a very strong Italian economy in the Middle Age, when there were hundreds of little independent towns in Italy, and we also have a very strong Italian economy when after the Second World War. So how it's now we are still a strong economy, not as strong as before, but still we are a big economy. How is possible to have a big economy in a so difficult place to manage as from a political point of view? And the last one is the book I mentioned it before, the book about the national character, the examination of what does it mean to be Italian and what does it mean to be a nation in Italy. Okay, and the last slide. Thank you. And the last slide is my little book I wrote in 2011 when there was the 150th anniversary of the Italian independence. Yes, I'm done. If you want to ask me a question to clarify what I didn't succeed to do, I'm here. And if you want to discuss some points, I'm here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Paolo. So the last book, that's your book, right?
Yes, it is.
But it's in Italian.
Of course, yes. I'm not so important to be translated, so that's...
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now have a question and answer session.
Actually,
Go ahead, Paolo.
No, you made me remember that in 2011 we celebrated the 150th anniversary, and we were invited because I wrote this book with my wife, and we were invited by the President of Republic because we were in the top 10 of the history book, Italian history book about 150th anniversary.
Wow.
And, but we didn't go actually because we had the kids were they were too young to be left wherever. So, but we were invited because we were the 7th or the 8th, I don't remember, place. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Bene. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions for Paolo.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Paolo, thank you very much. I learned, a lot about Italy and the peninsula. Between Korean peninsula and the Italian peninsula, sometimes we compare. I mean, the geopolitically very similar, but our history is very different. Okay, very different because the Korean peninsula, as you mentioned, we in ancient time, 7th century, Korea is unified, and since then it's lasted a long time, more than 1,500 almost years, and then it's completely I mean they're permanently like kinds of like divided, okay, after the liberation and after Korean War. But your country, the Italy, is unified 1861, around that time, right? Yeah, the
Yeah.
Garibaldi the story. It's very different, okay? Many the city, the state, or the city state or something. And when I traveled Italy, you have a very unique, very unique culture, or in each city. I think even Korea, our it's a small country, but we have like a different political rival or some the unity is sometimes very difficult. Even our national election, local the governors or administrators will be elected June 3rd next month, and so. I think your country there were very different, like some the political orientation or somewhat. Will you explain about since then unification? How could you promote or some this the social cohesion or unity from between different regions, and I heard particularly between the northern part and the southern part. Okay, very diverse, and there even there's some economic, the phenomenal the situation is different, political some orientation is a little different or something. So I would like to listen to okay, this situation from you. And one more thing, you are a history teacher and a scholar. I think the writing history book, okay, your history book is not easy maybe. So will you tell us about your the like how could you write history books for like a secondary school? Okay, or some government is involved in like or give some direction of or screening your history book, this writing history books. So would you tell us about that part too? Okay.
Yes. Maybe we can collect other
Okay.
question if you want. Or
Okay,
you want,
so that's the question of Sungho. Professor Watson?
okay, yes. Cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm coming to this a little bit like Professor Kang there, a kind of link to the Korean. I was really struck by one of your maps about the North and South divide, and as you showed the history, it looked very similar to the kind of Korean Peninsula, the way it's kind of evolved over time. So my first question is basically when unification is talked about, is it talked about in terms of a division from an external power that needs to be eradicated and then unification will happen? Or was that division based on that kind of history you talked about in terms of the city states and the kind of Renaissance and that kind of historical context? Because I was also very struck by the use of Gramsci when you were talking about different versions of unification. My second question is actually on the kind of the contemporary issue here regarding the way is unification still talked about? I mean, it's all the time in Korean politics. It's there. It's an official policy. It's often seen by North and South as a policy of absorption. So I was also very struck by that word colonialism, but the way the South sees the North. Is that becoming more of an issue in Italy now because of the politics and the populism around the European Union relationship? Is that part of a definition of being Italian, that it's unification? That itself, the language is used is significant. And I think also when you talked about the North and South and the kind of the context of Western Europe, and you talked about how the South was seen to be kind of there's almost a kind of European Orientalism going on here, that North and South is very, very different. And I'm wondering to what extent, you mentioned the British respect to this after the Crimean War and so on, how much of that is driven by this kind of the British elite view of Italy as the grand tour, as the classics, as a Latin, a few years after the Greek liberation from Turkey. Does that play a part in this? It's very elitist. I was very struck by when you mentioned the kind of elitist urban approach. The grand tour and the South was seen to be very different. And the reason I mentioned that, it may be a little bit flippant, but I was listening to some football interviews the other day, and they were talking about how when English footballers went to Italy, they went to Milan. But when they went to the South, their response is, oh, the South is another world. It's exotic. It's Mediterranean. It's Napoli. It's, Maradona was there at the time in the late 80s. Very, very different. That's rooted in this kind of Orientalism within British culture. So I'm just wondering, is that easing off a bit, or is that strengthening now? And my final question, in terms of a bit of domestic politics now, in terms of contemporary politics, how does Maloney see all this? Because it seems that the populists and the right in Italy are paradoxically using the kind of link to the Roman Empire, linking to the Renaissance and so on. But that, from what you were saying, that would be seen to be the kind of opposite of unification. So the kind of the weaponizing of Latin, the weaponizing of Rome for the kind of populist nationalism. There's some inherent contradictions in there. And I'm just wondering whether in Italy that has been identified, or whether the populists and Maloney's party are kind of using that in a very specific way, and that message is getting through now. Because as I think you rightly mentioned, the southern Italy linked to Africa, the migrant question. So I'm just wondering how that's playing out now in contemporary Italian politics. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Paolo, would you like to listen to Ilgin first, and then you can
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise I will forgot something. So I'm sorry for Ilgi. Yes, go on and then.
Okay, Ilgin, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I would like to thank you for the presentation. I found especially the visuals you used in the beginning, they were really helpful because they are very interesting to me in particular because of my background. Like, for example, we are neighbors. I have Venetian walls 2.5 kilometers that way. And for us, where Italy is and how Italy affected our history, it's really interesting. And for me to learn what led to the unification of Italy and sort of what it led to after that, with the ideas of Mare Nostrum and what came afterwards. It's really important because as you know, Italy after that sort of played part in the fall of weakening of the Ottomans and the situation in Libya. So I wanted to thank you and just say in the future, if you are able to provide from the Italian perspective the Libya situation, I think it was 1912. I would be very much interested to hear it from the Italian perspective.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
So,
Ilgin. Go ahead, Paolo. The questions of Sungho, Dr. Watson.
Yeah. So, what about how to foster political unification? The first idea is that basically we are in an unknown territory now, because if you think to Italian history, actually we had until the fall of the Berlin Wall, until the 90s, the early 90s, we had three single party regime, because from the unification to the First World War, there was a liberal dominance, nuanced, okay, but they were all liberals because, of course, you can understand it. They were elected by the 2% of the population. So therefore, they were all on the same page, different nuances of the same page, and was a monopartitic regime. What was the regime of the landowners, the great bourgeoisie, and that's all folks. Was not possible for anyone else to participate in the managing this country. There were some riots led by socialists in 1898, repressed and suppressed militarily. And the first socialist and the first Republican as well representative were elected between the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. So basically what was a monoparty. After that, there was the fascist regime, another one only party ruling government. And the third one as well was a kind of one regime, because the Christian Democrats ruled the country for more than 40 years without alternative, because the formally speaking, of course, and also substantially, we have a democratic constitution, but there was the Cold War, and the majority party was the Christian Democrat, steadily and voluntarily with the Westerns, with the Americans, with the NATO, and the other ones were the communists. They weren't able to become a ruling party. So somehow the regime stay still with the Christian Democratic in the middle. So now we are in the middle of nowhere, because 30 years ago, Mr. Berlusconi arrived, and then I'm coming to the populism. And Mr. Berlusconi arrived, and we gave to the European modernity, we gave the populism. We gave the populism and we taught the populism to everyone else. So he was a master of it, and still now we are in the middle of the very agitated sea, because and now I mentioned for the first time, how can I say, Mr. Meloni, because in Italy we have the two genders, you know, and she wants to be called il Presidente del Consiglio, the masculine. She didn't want, she does not want to be called la Presidente del Consiglio. I don't know why, but it's a point, because the difference is the politically correctness for them is a leftist thing, and she wanted to differentiate. And anyway, Mrs. Meloni, I don't know, Miss Meloni, I don't know if she's married. Miss Meloni is making a foreign politics very similar to the Christian democratic one, because there are some objectives. Yes, some objective facts. So as we saw before, we are in the middle of the Mediterranean. We have thousands of kilometers of undefendable coasts. So we have to we have to stay more or less in good relationship with everyone. Otherwise, we are in danger of an invasion. So it's a political. On one day she is for Trump, on the other day she is against, because Trump is making a mess. So it's a situation. I don't know how the unification has been challenged by the Lega Nord in the 90s, the Salvini party, strongly challenged. And nowadays, Salvini is one of the most nationalistic leader in Italy. So it's a complicated thing. We don't know exactly. Of course, we are unified when the national football team won the championship, but they are defeated every time. So it's a problem, you know. It's a situation which, so it's an unknown situation for. What does it mean writing an history textbook in this moment? I don't know, and that's why I'm writing down a book on Korean history, because I don't know how to read, how to write down a textbook on Italian history. Independence versus unification. This is an interesting point. Basically, when I went to school, when I attended the schools, I interpreted the traditional interpretation of Italian unification was the independence one. So we are against the Austrians. We were against the Austrians. We were against the Austrian dictatorship, which was not as much as a dictatorship as we thought, but it was an exploitation. I don't know if you know this remark. The Austrian Empire was always in deficit, and the only part of the Austrian Empire not in deficit was the northern part of Italy. So therefore, they exploited our wealth, the northern part of Italy wealth, agriculture wealth, in order to pay their bills. So that's a situation in which independence was a problem, because the people at the time, the elite people at the time, thought they were exploited by the Austrians. So there are issues about unification. Of course, there are issues about it's better to say there are issues about citizenship now in Italy. What does it mean to be a citizen in Italy? The day before yesterday, there was an assassination made by a guy in Modena, an Italian citizen, with Moroccan ancestors, Moroccan parents. And Mr. Salvini say we have to withdraw the citizenship, which is not legal. It's not possible because he was born Italian. So it's the issue, the field of discussion between the right and the wing in Italy is about what does it mean to be citizens. What it's a problem of citizenship. It's citizenship is still like in the French revolutionary tradition or American tradition, an inclusion feature or an exclusion one. The right wing thinks that we have to exclude the non-citizens in Italy, and the wing and the left wing try to stay with the human rights rules and use citizenship as an inclusion tool. Okay. How Meloni sees history? It's a very interesting question. Meloni is worrying especially about the recent history, the very recent history, the history of the 70s. As you probably know, in the 70s we had a kind of low rate civil war there were the two armed extremist factions. The most famous one is the Red Brigade, and there are also, but there were also neo-fascist movements, and there was a lot of violence. And the Meloni's party came from the violent tradition of the neo-fascist movements, and she wanted to legitimize. This tradition, telling the story, telling the good part of the story, the part on which he wanted to be connected, the legal one, and she omitted the relationship between the legal neo-fascist part with the terrorist and violent people. So this is the idea. And I don't think they wanted to exploit the older. Is not a Meloni point, but is a point made up by the liberal conservatives. Nowadays, we are in Italy experiences a changing on history curriculum fostered by Ernesto Galli della Loggia, which is one of the leading leading scholars of the liberal right, and he wanted to go back to the idea of an Italian nation state building with the story of heroism and fight against the foreign countries and for our culture, the idea of course of Orientalism. For the other ones are not part of our culture, especially the Arabs, especially the Slavs, the Slavic people, especially the African people. We belong to the Western countries, and we are the cradle of Western countries. But it's not the far right position; it's the liberal right position. Right. I don't know if I answer all the questions.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we have a second wave of questions, Joycey. And Sandeep, you raised your hand earlier, but we'll ask the lady first to ask her question, and then you, Sandeep. Joycey, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paolo, Ceccoli. It was really wonderful listening to very comprehensive, very rich presentation. Yeah. And it's also very enlightening now. I would just ask you, I'd like to request you probably to elaborate more, because I'm not a historian, I'm not a social scientist, I am an artist, a humanist, and I write a little, but I'm more into theater direction and dance choreography. Anyway, have taken note about the role of the writers, since Dante Alighieri and Petrarch and Boccaccio. And then we have that movement, that anti-risorgimento, the Renaissance, and how these all sort of fermented, and laid down the collective consciousness, set forth this collective consciousness of Italian identity or a sense of a nation. You see, in the Philippines, we are diverse, not only politically, but also culturally, with about almost 200 ethnic communities all over, the indigenous peoples of the Philippines, who are marginalized and politically disempowered. And I belong to that kind of thinker, and also an advocate for nationalism. No? I think Professor Bernard knows very much about that, because that's also propagated by my late husband, who was a nationalistic writer. So I'd like you to say more about this, the writers, the artist's role in the sense of unification, or this collective consciousness.
Yeah, I see.
Considering the diversity and the political persuasions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we ask first from our sister university of J. Nehru University, Sandeep, to ask your question?
Yeah, I think I will also condone that it was a great lecture, very comprehensive, and we learned a lot. My question is actually two. One is actually that how much is there any racial or ethnic, you can say, divide in all those different components of modern day Italy? So, because you can say in India, we have multiple racial and ethnic stocks, and that also complicates the process of unification or the idea of identity, Indian identity. So, I would also like to know that whether this racial and ethnic part is there. And two, actually, I'm also interested in what is because you are the most accomplished person to answer this question, that how much European identity is basically how Italy looks at itself vis-a-vis other, say, Western European states, and the modern, you can say, European configuration. So these are the two simple and ignorant questions. Sorry for that.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Okay. The role of the Italian great culture in the building up of our national identity has to be splitted. I'm answering. So there is another question.
Okay, Jonathan Kim, please ask your question.
Yeah. Because I've been engaged in education for 30 years, I'm interested in this question. You have served as historian, giving us great explanation on your history. And before this presentation, I've been curious about your country, which is very famous by such famous figures as Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and your great culture movement, Renaissance. So my question is, you are serving as historian, teaching students, and is there any educational movement for the cultivation of some consciousness for the next generation, so that the future leaders can play a pivotal role in unifying your country and expand their capacity beyond the boundaries of national identity to the world-embracing vision, so that the world can be greatly and immensely spiritually assisted by your great spiritual legacy, Renaissance.
Okay. So, yes. The importance, the first and the last one are connected. First of all, we have to split down the problem of the influence of Italian culture. Because if you speak about Dante, paradoxically speaking, is the most local and the most international one. Because Dante is translated in all the language of the world, I think, and also is the only Italian poet who the people know by heart, especially in Tuscany. You can come across even illiterate people who know a long part of the Dante's poems. Because the values, the ideas of Dante are universal on one hand, and rooted in the Italian history on the other hand. So I mean, Dante is a part of our identity. Dante gave us a lot of linguistic expressions, a lot of sayings, a lot of metaphors. Like Shakespeare, it's the same. So like Shakespeare gave a lot of things to the English language. Dante did the same. This is and it's the same for Leonardo or Michelangelo, because they are rooted in the Italian tradition and they are worldly known. And answering the other part of the Italian culture are less. You know who is the most important writer in the world after Dante? Most important Italian writer in the world after Dante, you know who is? It's the author of Pinocchio. It's the most translated one. Walt Disney made a film about it. But why? Because once again, the idea of normalize a puppet, a wooden puppet, in a normal kid, it's an idea to normalize the energy and the energy of a young man who is impossible to put into the chain of adult life, into the constrictions of the adult life. And this is another universal message, but rooted into the Italian character. There is I didn't mention it, but there is an interesting book by an American anthropologist and literary scholar. I will give you to Sungo Kang an email with this title of this book, which gave us the argument that Pinocchio is a model of the industrial modernization, of the identity of the people in the modern world, because the people in the modern world was forced to switch from a natural kind of life, seeking pleasures, seeking leisures, seeking a good way of life, particularly popular in Italy, to the world in which you have to be polite, you have to be behave correctly, and you have to follow the rules. This is the Italian culture is in these two examples is on the same time universal and particular and peculiar. The other part of the Italian culture, of course, the artistic one, for example, are so important that one of our main part of our culture is still the creativity. And coming to the last question again, unfortunately, in Italy, there is no room enough for this creativity. We have more than, you have, I don't know exactly the figures, but tens of thousands of young, well-educated people are emigrating every year from Italy, working abroad all over the world. Because this creativity is not, we are in a crisis of development now, and we are still in these years we are more similar to the Japan in the 90s, in the 80s, in a kind of stagflation. We are still rich, but we are not moving up. We are not fostering. We are not bettering. We are not improving. We are in a mood of yes, kind of stagflation situation. And the well-educated young people are, of course, internationally, and also connected to the European countries. We call it the Erasmus youth. Erasmus is the program of the European Union in which they are attending university all over Europe. So this is a very, European Union is one of the best part of our story, because it's not a well-known story, but Italy was one of the most important country fostering the European Union, in a very pragmatic way, of course, because we tried, there is a move in Italian language, there is a saying in Italian language, quello che si può fare si fa, quello che non si può fare non si fa. That means what you can do, you do, but what you can't do, you didn't, you don't do. So it's a kind of normal attitude in Italy, and this is the idea of culture and the relationship with the and this is another issue, because the right-wing landscape in Italy is at least formally against Europe, but on the other hand, they can't do nothing without Europe because of our debt, because we need Europe to in order to have the money, the value of the currency stabilized. So it's only open the mouth without any meaning, according to me, to be against Europe. Okay. What about the question of racism in Italy? Of course, there is racism in Italy. It's a very complicated one. For example, when Mussolini decided to adopt racial laws in Italy, define what is an Italian race was quite impossible, because there were at least 3 ways to interpret and to underline what is an Italian race. A kind of cultural. So the Italian race is what doesn't mean it belongs to the Italian literature and whatever. A kind of genetics, so-called, and at the time there wasn't any genetics, but a kind of physical way, which was very weird, because in the north there are many people with blonde hair and blue eyes, and in the south they are very Mediterranean and somehow also Arab like. So it's very difficult. And the third one was a kind of a political idea, the idea to belong to the tradition of the Roman Empire, but it was impossible to define exactly what was a racial, even for the Germans, of course, but then the Germans were arrived with this concept of Aryanism, which was not possible for us. But racial issues are still with us. We don't know exactly what racism is in Italy. There are not many research about it, but there is racism in Italy, and this racism is especially it's also very ancient. Because it's racism against the Slavic people of eastern part of Italy. It's racism against the Albanian. We have a colony of Albanians, for example, from the 16th century, and these Albanians were not integrated fully. They didn't have a full integration still now. We have, but we have also, we experience also a lot of racism against Arabs, against Muslim, against Indian people coming from India, and people coming from the Black Africa. So this is an issue in Italy. As I said, I don't know if I already said to you, but last week there were two assassinations by two assassination in the street. Nothing particularly strange, but what struck me was that this assassination were made by two boys, 15 years old boys. And in the first case was assassinated a guy in the street of Ghana's origins. He came from Ghana. And on the other part of Italy were assassinated as a so-called normal Italian. And what struck me were the newspaper titles, because the newspaper titles emphasize in the first case, a man from Ghana was assassinated by very little, a 15 years old boy, the first. And the second one was a man was assassinated by a 15 years old guy. So emphasizing not the race of the man, but the age of the killer. So it's an issue in Italy. It's not well known. It's not evident. It's an issue, and there is a new small tiny I hope small tiny new party, political party, led by former general of the army, Mr. Vannacci, who is fostering this racism, telling, for example, that our black athletes are not real Italians. So it's crazy, but it's that. I don't know if I answered everything, but okay. So many young people feel themselves Italian, but especially when they are abroad. That's one point.
Okay, thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Joyce, Sandeep, and Jonathan for the questions. It's 9:30 in Manila and 10:30 in Seoul. So, Sungho, do we still have time?
Okay, no time. Too late. Okay. So, okay. Thank you, Bernard. Okay.
Sungho, yeah, I would just like to add, Paolo, the Garibaldi that I know is the one who fought in the independence movement in Uruguay.
Yes.
Was involved in the American Civil War.
Yes.
Was supportive of the First International.
Yes.
A friend of Mikhail Bakunin.
Yes, of course.
And supportive of the Paris Commune.
Yes, of course.
So the Garibaldi that I know is an internationalist.
Yeah, it was one of the first internationalists at the time in Italy. Yeah. He fought in the Franco-Russian War.
Yeah, on the side of
Franco-Prussian War, on the side of the French, yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting personality, Garibaldi.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay, so thank you, Paolo. Over to you, Sung Ho.
Thank you, both of you. Okay, moderator and the speaker. I invited the Paolo to this forum as a speaker. I wonder, Paolo, before you were here as a speaker, I wonder, this is the second time or first time?
It's the first time for me.
First time, yeah. I think
Yeah.
some EuroClio members were here. Particularly, personally, I'm very interested in Italy, okay?
Yeah.
And not only this unification, but the Renaissance, okay? Sometime later, maybe, I hope, Paolo, you can join us one more time to talk about the Renaissance, okay? Renaissance.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to announce our next program next month, June. Okay, June. I think if we had a time today, I wanted to ask what Paolo about his research agenda, Korean War. Okay, he's now doing involved in the research on the Korean War because Italia, during Korean War 1950, 16 countries they sent the combat members, okay, to the United Nations under the umbrella of United Nations, and 5 countries they sent to the medical corps. Maybe one of them is Italy, I think, as far as I remember, and
Yes.
right, they are collecting all this testimony or some. The veterans, okay, contact veterans and interview or something. But I think many of them already passed away. Okay, passed away.
Yes.
They're very old age. And the next month, June 25th, June 25th is exactly that is the outbreak of Korean War. Okay, 76 years ago, and this is not only simple just war between civil war, not only just a simple civil war between South Korea, North Korea, and South Korea, but this international war. Okay, and the first war of the occasion of the Cold War. Okay, Cold War, and sometime later, there will be many long stories, okay, about this war, and this is really big conflict between China and USA, okay, USA, under the name of umbrella. So our next forum, June 25th, coincidentally, that is a Thursday, okay, and the title is the Korean War and remembering the Korean War, historical memory, human suffering, and the pursuit of lasting peace. Among the other, like to looking for the look for the speaker from our members, our the History NGO Forum members. Otherwise, I will volunteer. Okay, I'm very personally interested in this topic, and I am doing research myself. So I'd like to find, including myself. Okay, so hope to see you next month. And okay, until then, everybody keep healthy and safe, and hope to see you again. Okay, in our forum. Okay. Okay, everybody, thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
your
Bye-bye.
participation,
Bye.
and wish to say
Bye-bye.
bye-bye and good night.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank you.
here,
Kamsahamnida.
Myorin from United States. Okay, good morning. Have a wonderful day. Okay,
Bye. Bye-bye.
Rebecca too. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye.
Grazie molto.
Okay.
Grazie.